All right, you're listening to the Royal Rant. I'm Ryan.
Tim.
We have a very special guest. You probably already know Eddie Garcia. He's the hardest working man in the podcast game.
Thank you.
30 plus year Kings fan. Does the Locked on Kings podcast. And he was gracious enough to talk to us today about our favorite team, the LA Kings.
Thanks for having me,
And
guys.
so, in your honor, we're repping our jerseys. We don't always have them on, but
The figures
we're inspired.
you guys
and
do
we
that.
feel like we need a little something after losing 3 of 4.
Yeah. Well, you
We need
guys,
to crank out, get the mojo going.
it's funny you guys are doing that, and I almost always wear a jersey, and I'm not wearing one right now, so sorry about that. My fault.
Not a problem. You're representing with that excellent Kings hat.
You know, it's funny. I thought, yeah, Eddie always wear a jersey. We have to wear him. And I'm like, I bet he won't because he doesn't have to.
Man, now I feel
The way
bad.
things work out.
Yeah, I feel bad. Sorry.
I guess we're kind of firing like the Kings power play right now.
Yeah. Well,
Just a little off.
a lot off.
So what do you think?
but-
So we
I was gonna say, I
you
think we're doing
recently
better
gave
than that.
grades on the Kings.
Yeah.
And you gave some pretty nice grades, I think. And I think it was the other day on Twitter, it seemed like you were a little exasperated with the Sky is Falling Kings fans. I think after they had lost to Edmonton and Calgary. Why do you why do you think the Kings fan base has such a fragile psyche all the time?
Well, I think it was well deserved for a while. There was a lot of bad times. We had the one crazy run to the Cup final when I just became a Kings fan, back in '92. But other than that, there's not been a lot of great moments as a Kings fan. And so a lot of them have or had, kind of an attitude of something bad is going to happen. But then, you win 2 Stanley Cups in 3 years, and it completely, changes the attitude, I think, of the franchise and the fan base for a little while. Certainly, they haven't been a disaster necessarily since then. I mean, going to the playoffs, 3 straight years looks like it's going to be a 4th. So there's plenty of teams like Buffalo who would love to have something like that. But, there still is. And I don't, social media is a great thing, and it's sometimes not a great thing. I don't know how much of it is a true representation of the fan base and how much of it is just the people that obviously are very vocal, very opinionated, and obviously feel like they want to share that opinion with the world. So it's a reflection of a vocal fan part of the fan base, but is it a reflection of the entire fan base? Probably not. So how much of, should we take into what we read and see on social media as that's the Kings fan base? I don't know. But certainly there's a vocal part of the Kings fan base that is probably glasses half empty kind of guys. And, there's that very vocal portion of the fan base that wants Rob Blake fired, and everything that happens that's bad, fire Rob Blake. So what the reality is, though, is probably not quite as reactionary or as pessimistic, I would guess. I hope.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes you wonder, you talked about the amplification of just a few vocal people, in social media. You kind of wonder overall, like, what do people think about the team? Because there's a lot to be happy about, right? Best home record in the league, well on pace to make the playoffs again. So obviously, in our last episode, we kind of had a little bit of a meltdown about the power play, but obviously, if there were an easy answer, somebody would have figured it out already. But what do you think the issue is?
Well, people that are smarter than me about the game point to the lack of having a right-handed shot. And, I play beer league hockey, but that's like saying I play, slow pitch softball and try and talk about the major leagues. It's kind of, you can kind of get some things from that, but not really. So, I've been told that it's almost like the opposing team only has to defend one side of the ice is the way it's been explained to me. I probably should get somebody on the show who's very, technically sound. Maybe Jim Fox could explain it in great detail, actually why, it's so important to have I understand having a right hand shot on your right side for your defense, easier to hold the puck in, easier to dump it in, keep it in the zone, that kind of thing. And left on the left side as well. I get why that's what you would like to have, but why the power play? I mean, fundamentally, I understand, I kind of understand it, but what I don't understand is how it can be that impactful to a power play, how it can be how having all left-hand shots for the most part causes your power play to be terrible. Is that the case league wide? Are the Kings the only? Obviously, people are more right-handed than left-handed, so you have more left shots than right shots. So are there other teams that are heavy with left shot forwards that also struggle on the power play like that? I don't know. I would love to know the answer to that. So that's what I've been told. For me, my very basic knowledge of hockey is when things go bad or things aren't working, you go back to basics. And I think Jim Hiller did a little bit of that in the last game against Seattle when he put Jordan Spence as the quarterback on the number one power play unit. Because Brant Clark is a more creative guy looking to make plays, where Jordan Spence is get it to me and I'll shoot it. And I think that's what the Kings need more of on their power play. And we had an email on our feedback show this past Friday from a guy saying, I wish the Kings would play their power play like it was 5-on-5. And I thought that was actually a very insightful kind of a comment, in that have it be more, have more pressure, have it be more direct, not looking to set up a play or to make a nice pass here, there, or whatever. Let's go to the net, get guys in front, and go to basics and try and see if we can get things going that way. And then if we can, once that starts, then maybe you start to look to pass it around a little bit more. But it's not the most technical answer in the world, but I just don't understand why this power play is this bad. I don't expect it to be maybe one of the best in the league, but one of the worst in the league. I don't know. It's obviously, if Jim Hiller could had the answers, he would have corrected it by now. But it is really surprising to me that it's this bad.
Yeah, it's such a glaring weakness, and we've seen that in past games with having power plays and not being able to convert, really swings the momentum towards the other team. We saw that in that Calgary game and other games this season. So it's almost it's not just not scoring, but it's also kind of giving a lift to the other team. So if they could even just get back towards the middle of the pack in terms of, that would probably be a huge difference for the rest of the season. But
yeah, I absolutely think it would be. I'm not looking for them to make a drastic change or be extremely efficient on the power play, but just being okay, not it being something that kind of sucks the life out of you. Because at least
exactly,
if you're on the power play, you at least want to make the other team work hard and expend energy and hopefully get some momentum, at least that way, if you don't get a goal. And I don't know that they make the other team's penalty kill even work that hard, to be honest.
That's true. They're always just taking the puck back from their own end and trying to, enter the zone again for like the fourth time.
No,
yeah, that's a great point.
It's just like you mentioned too. I wish they would, play it as like a 5-on-5 and be more aggressive. But I think this team is like, it's the defense, that structure has been so ingrained in them. I think it's hard for them, like you said and mentioned with Clark, to like be creative or aggressive on the power play. It seems like it's more almost safety first, for whatever reason, when they actually have the man advantage. That doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, another email on our show on Friday, kind of talked about that, and maybe that their defensive style that's so in your face and aggressive and constantly moving, maybe once they get into a position where they're, I don't want to say more passive, but you're not working as hard on the power play, right? You're just not, because you have an extra man and whatnot. So maybe that attitude is also, it's so different than what they normally do when they're killing a penalty or when they're 5-on-5, that it's just kind of almost takes them out of their game a little bit. So maybe there is something to that.
And so one of the things that it's kind of been in the news this last week is this, especially from the Edmonton media, about, Kempe being a violent player. And just recently, we've kind of seen McDavid show a chippy side. He kind of elbowed somebody in that Minnesota game. Then in the game against Vancouver, he looked like he cross-checked Garland on purpose right in the face. And do you think, should we expect some discipline for that cross-check from McDavid, or is he going to kind of golden boy his way out of it?
Well, he's having a hearing with the Department of Player Safety, and normally when they do that, they do hand out a suspension. And I think so much came out of that elbow that was complete. That plays a factor in this incident happening so soon afterwards that everyone really saw. I mean, the other one, I think he did it on purpose. I think it was probably a dirty play. I don't know that he meant to hurt the guy, but he saw an opportunity to take a shot at somebody. I don't know what went on in the game prior to that, if he was getting back at him for something, because I didn't watch the game. I just saw the highlight. I think he knew what he was doing and he wanted to get a little shot on a guy, and it, probably didn't mean to hurt him like he did. And, but when you have another incident right after that, and then I don't even know if people will, in the Kings game, he high sticked Vladislav Gavrikov. I mean, it was really obvious and they didn't call it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of fans get upset about maybe a double standard. And certainly in all sports, they take care of their stars. Leagues do, they do, like Patrick Mahomes, if you're a football fan. So I got to believe that this was so egregious that they do something. I would be surprised if they didn't give him a game or two. They don't typically suspend the stars, but I think the multiple incidences this week with the spotlight on him and people talking about it in the media, I would be surprised if they didn't give him a suspension. If he doesn't get a suspension from this, that's, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty bad. You can't cross-check a guy in the face like that. Now, had he been injured, had Connor Garland gotten hurt from that, to me, there's no way they don't suspend him. In a weird way, unfortunately, he was okay. I'm sure it didn't feel good, but the league is very inconsistent with suspensions. That's the one thing, that it really they don't do a very good job with. So we'll see. I'm not going to sit here and say I'll be shocked if they don't suspend him. I won't be shocked, but I'll actually be a little bit surprised because of what's happened this week with him. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's right. It would be kind of a bad look not to do something, but I think what led up to that is Garland kind of did what I would call the Esa Tikkanen. You remember that guy where he would just kind of just lay on Luke Robitaille and hold him down to the ice, and then Robitaille would end up getting a penalty. I remember, I don't know if that was in 91 or 92, one of those playoff series where that actually happened. Like Tikkanen was just holding Robitaille on the ice, wouldn't let him get up, and then I think when Robitaille finally got up, he got called for something, and that kind of put the ice on that game.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Tkachuk.
So Garland, he kind of just held McDavid down for a while, and then when McDavid finally got loose of him, he just stood up and just popped him with that cross-check in the face. So.
Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk does some stuff like that. Formerly of the Flames, now of the Panthers. He did it actually, I think it was 2 weeks ago. He took a guy down in the crease and then he just laid on top of him. And unfortunately for him, or fortunately, maybe justice, it interfered with his goalie's ability to play his position in the crease because he had two guys laying in front of him and they scored a goal on it. And then, Florida complained. And it's like, no, Tkachuk was laying on the guy. He couldn't get up. So that's on him. So they counted the goal.
Exactly.
So it doesn't always work out. But yeah, no, I get McDavid being frustrated with a guy that was doing the leg lock on him and grabbing him and holding him, but you still can't respond like that. And I think in his mind, it was in the final seconds. So he knew maybe in the first period, he's not going to probably react like that because he's obviously wants to help his team try and win. But it was in the final seconds and he probably thought in his frustration, we're going to lose anyway. So I'm going to get my revenge like this. The penalty was called, but there's 2 seconds left. Who cares, right? So that hopefully will play a factor in it as well. Yeah, don't let him get away with that.
Right. So you said you became a Kings fan in '92.
That was when I really got into the team. Yeah, I was very fortunate because I was a huge sports fan. I loved all the other sports, but hockey was kind of in my blind spot. And I had a college roommate who was a huge Kings fan. And so he helped me to get turned on to it, answered questions that I had about it and whatnot. But that was the first year I decided, because I would watch sporadically, but not every game. And that was the first year I said, I'm going to really follow this team from day one. And little did I know what was going to happen. And playoff hockey is so amazing. And then the run that they had, game 7 in Toronto. And I just was like, this is it. I'm in, man. I'm all in. And I was obviously disappointed because I really thought they were going to win the cup. But yeah, that sold me pretty much forever, being a hockey fan. And it's really just kind of grown every year since then.
Were you able to go to a game that in 92, 93 round?
No, I actually grew up in Central California.
Okay.
So I didn't come to Southern California until about 25 years ago for work. And I've been here ever since. So I've actually lived here longer than I did in Southern California or Central California. So I feel like I'm certainly a transplanted Southern California now. So I did come to a few games after that year, and I saw Gretzky play at the Forum, which was cool, but didn't was not into the Kings. Like, as long as some people did not know about the Triple Crown line until later. Wish I could have saw Marcel Dion play. I've always been very curious. I mean, his numbers speak for themselves, one of the legends of the sport, but I really don't know what he was all about with my own eyes. There's not even really highlights on YouTube you can really go watch. So not as old school as some Kings fans out there, but not too bad. It's getting to see, and obviously when Gretzky came to LA, that did pique my interest. It's hard not to think, well, the greatest player in the world is now on this team in California. This is interesting. So that kind of obviously it got the ball rolling a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. You have a question, Tim?
Well, I was going to ask Eddie about Kevin Fiala. Eddie does his good Kevin, bad Kevin, and I think that's how a lot of Kings fans feel about Fiala. Sometimes he does some things that are just amazing, and you feel kind of fortunate to have a guy like that on the team. And then sometimes he does some stuff that's just reckless, either taking penalties or just trying to force a play that's just not there at all. So I wonder what you're thinking. Do you think he'll ever be able to find like a consistent game with the Kings, or do you think he maybe just doesn't fit in with the team and how they play? It seems like, I know it seems almost like he feels like a lot of pressure on himself to maybe really become like a superstar in LA, but I just wonder how you feel if it's going to work out eventually.
I think it's very fair to wonder if he is a fit with the Kings at this point. I understand the trade to get him. He's at times dynamic and can do some amazing things, and he can do some things that some of the players on the Kings really can't do. He can create his own shot, right? He
Hmm.
can, and he can. Maybe I don't know if fear is the right word, but when he gets the puck on his stick in the offensive zone, he gets the attention of the other team. Not a lot of the other Kings players are like that necessarily, right? Because you don't know exactly what he can do. I mean, we saw that goal he scored the other day on that, pull and drag wrist shot. You're just like, that's the guy we want, right? That's the creative guy who can, it was technically a power play goal, but I mean, it was a 2-on-1. That's the guy we need to see a little bit more of. So but he is very inconsistent defensively. He doesn't seem to fit with the Kings. I know he's not the worst defensive player around. I think he tries to play defense, but the numbers are the numbers. I mean, he's the only guy on the Kings that's a minus on the season. It's been getting a little bit better, but early in the year, it was just terrible. That the other team always seemed to score when he was on the ice. So, and a lot of his mistakes, I think his heart is in the right place. It's not
Yeah,
like
no.
he's doing something. He's doing something to try and make a play. He wants to make something happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. You want to have players that want to make a good play to make something happen, but he does force it on occasion and he just has to pick his spots better. I think he's done a better job of late than he did earlier in the season. He's also eliminated a lot of the dumb penalties he was taking earlier in the season. So it's there's improvement there, but he needs to, you're willing to put up with some of his warts if he can give you some special plays like he did with that goal the other day. He just needs to do more of that to justify him
Mhm.
being in the lineup. If he's not going to give you that and he still has the negative plays, then that doesn't work. And also he's a guy you're kind of paying to be a top six forward, and yet he's
Mhm.
always on the third line, and he always
Yeah,
seems to be better on the third line. I'm not
yeah,
sure exactly why that is, but
yeah,
that's also another thing where you're like, well, I'm paying this guy to be a top six forward, but he's never in our top six. That's not great.
yeah. And I think that really hurt the Kings last season in the playoffs. They really couldn't find a way to utilize him or get him going. And so, yeah, he seemed
I,
like
I
he.
do like I do like playing him the full 2 minutes on the power play. I know some people have. I mean, look, it hasn't. You can't say it's really worked, but when you consider he's one of those guys that's never going to be a penalty killer, right? You want to get something else out of him from what he does do well. So I thought it made a ton of sense for Jim Miller to do that, to get him more ice time in that kind of a situation, to try and get him going. It hasn't necessarily worked yet, but I thought it was a good idea to try and do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's that's where he should be for sure. The full 2 minutes. So that's his time to shine, I would say. Because just like he can do things that a lot of other Kings players can't. I remember when the Tampa Bay game at Crypto, he stick handled and skated through four skaters and you know got that pass off to Laferriere. And I was watching it live, there, and I just like I couldn't believe that. Like, he looked exceptional.
Yeah, he definitely gives you glimpses
Hmm.
of some specialness. So he just needs to be more consistent.
For sure.
Right, speaking about getting guys going, what are we going to do about Phil Dano and Trevor Moore?
I'm okay with Deneau because he gives you so many other things other than scoring, and he's never been a great scorer. I know his numbers aren't quite where they usually are. He's a little bit off, but I think he does. He's pretty good in faceoffs. He's a good defensive player. He can set up other players without necessarily being the finisher. So I'm okay with him. But Trevor Moore, I don't know what's going on because at least Kevin Fiala will give you some good with some bad, and Trevor is just not doing anything really. I don't. He's just kind of out there.
Yeah.
He's not even really getting chances where Fiala is getting chances. He doesn't finish on all of them, but he gets chances. So I don't know. I really don't know what's going on with Trevor. I mean, I thought last year was kind of it obviously was a breakout season for him, a career year, but I didn't. If you look at the goals he scored last year, because sometimes a guy will have a career year and it's just like everything's going in for him. No matter where he shoots it, it goes off somebody's skate and goes in. It just everything's working for him and he just had a career year. But he scored some really high end skilled goals. He was putting it into the top corner of the net. He was making moves around people and scoring. So it wasn't like he was just getting lucky all the time. So I thought, well, I think this is sustainable. I think this is Trevor Moore coming into his own and is going to be a legit 30-ish goal scorer going forward. And it just has not been there. I know he was a little bit banged up, but I don't think that was really a good explanation for what's been going on with him. I don't know. I really don't. So, when you look at where the Kings are defensively, great. Offensively, if they can just get a little bit more from Kevin, from Trevor, and Quentin Byfield, who I think I'm not as down on him as some people are. I understand the concern, but he's been getting better and better. He's doing a lot of good things. His energy, his defense now, they're kind of having this role of a defensive shutdown center, which he's kind of embraced and done a decent job at, which is good. So, but a little bit more offense from him as well, I think would go a long way. So, kind of like with the power play, I just need it to be decent. I think we need Fiala and Moore and Byfield to contribute a little bit more, and I think the Kings will be okay offensively. So, I think they're okay now, but that would really go a long way. Getting a little bit better on the power play, getting a little bit more production from those three guys, I think would really go a long way.
Yeah, that would be a huge difference, But I think you're right about Byfield. I mean, he does make a lot. He does have a 200-foot game
Mm-hmm.
right now. And I don't know if he got that from watching Kopitar but quite frequently, you'll see him. I forget which game on this road trip, but he created a play in the offensive zone, and skated all the way back and broke up one, going the other way, and he does that a lot. So that can't be discounted. I mean, yeah, it's not really sexy. It doesn't really show up in the box score, really, but it is important, And he's still just 22, so we'll it's too soon to really have a definitive book on him, I think.
For sure.
But
For sure.
yeah, if we could get a few more goals out of him, that would just be huge for the team.
Yeah, and I thought in the last game against Seattle, he had a couple of awesome chances and he just missed. And I was
Yeah,
thinking afterwards, I hope he doesn't look at that game as a negative. I hope he looks at that as a positive because
Yeah.
he got some real. Don't get frustrated. I know it wasn't what you wanted it to be. I know you didn't finish on a couple, but he had a couple of really creative, good chances that just went wide or whatever. So keep doing that. Keep doing that. It will happen. It will eventually go in for you. But don't get frustrated. I hope somebody on the staff pulled him aside and said, "Hey, that was a good game. Look at these, look at the video, look at these two chances. Keep doing that." So we'll see.
now, do you have any concerns with maybe Darcy Kemper getting too much work? Because I sometimes feel like, maybe we should see Riddich a little more just to kind of keep Kemper fresh for hopefully a long playoff run, maybe.
I not too much, to be honest with you. I mean, he is a veteran guy, but he didn't play a ton last year in Washington. He lost his starting job, so it wasn't like he was overworked there and now he comes into this season and is getting overworked. I don't think. I think he's okay, depending on where the Kings are in the standings. Maybe. And he has been hurt a couple of times, so he did miss some time. He hasn't played, the full complement of games, so to speak. I think though, we'll see. If I was Jim Hiller, with the Kings having a lot more home games in the final month and a half of the season, they've got a lot of home games, which is great. Maybe that's where you see David Riddick a little bit more because he's been so good at home. Maybe you feel a little bit more comfortable in that situation. Whereas the Kings have been okay on the road, some good, some bad. You want your number one guy in there as much as you can. So we'll see if that happens. I would hope it would. If Riddick continues to be so good at home when they have a lot of those home games in the second half there at the end of the year, maybe we see more of him because of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Tim, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I was wondering, I know you talk about on your show some of the moves Rob Blake has made, and do you think he's gonna try to trade for a right-handed shot? Or is he gonna make a move, come the deadline to try to get this team, maybe that extra piece to get out of the first round?
Yeah, I talked about it on a show recently. I read an article by this guy, Matt Larkin. He writes for the Daily Face-Off, and he was talking about, he kind of put all the GMs around the league in these tiers, and there were 4 different tiers, and then like the first one was like the gunslingers, do anything to acquire talent, to picks be damned, whatever, it's all about winning it now, and then blah blah, and the bottom one was like the the cautious pick your spot kind of GM, and that was where Rob Blake was, and I thought that was accurate. He isn't real active at the deadline historically, more active in the offseason with trades or signings. He did have that one year where he went and got Gavrikov and Korpisalo, so I think when he thinks there's a need and he can make a move, he'll do it, but he's not going to just go, I don't think, all in and just make something really crazy happen. I mean, I kind of think that Pierre-Luc Dubois, well, that was not a deadline deal. That was kind of a big swing for him, and he whiffed. So I can understand why he wouldn't be all that crazy about trying something again like that, possibly. And then, of course, he's in the final year of his contract. So how does that change his attitude or not about making some big deal? I think if the Kings fail in the first round again, that they make a GM change. I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been 5 playoff appearances with no playoff wins, no series wins. I mean, even if you don't think he's been as bad as some of the folks on social media, that's still not success, right? And you look to make a change. And we had a guest, Keith Freeze, on, and he had mentioned that he could see, if the Kings don't win a playoff series this year, Blake staying in the front office in some role, but not being the GM anymore. I could see that as well.
Yeah.
Because I think he's well thought of in the organization, obviously a legendary player. I don't think the organization feels he's done as bad of a job at GM as some people do, as some fans do. But still, at some point, it's like, okay, we've changed the coach. We've brought in a lot of different players this year. What's kind of been the one constant? It's the voice running the team, constructing the roster. So does that change his philosophy, though, to try and save his job? I don't think it would. I don't think it will, but it'll be interesting to see. I think he will probably stick to what he has been, and that is he'll look to add a piece that makes sense, that is someone that can supplement the roster, but it's not going to be some big name like some of the fans want to, it's fun to speculate about those kind of things. And you look at some of these guys that are going to be scheduled to be unrestricted free agents at the end of the year, like Mitch Marner in Toronto or Mikko Rantanen in Colorado. And these are A+ players that any team would die to add. They're not, I mean, that's a pipe dream. I mean, it's fun. It's fun to dream about.
Yeah.
Fun to dream about, but it's just, there's no reality to it. So could he add? See, I'm not a know-it-all for sure, believe me, but I was really pushing for him to bring back Tyler Toffoli in the offseason. I thought he was perfect for what the Kings needed, a right-handed shot who can score, who knows the Kings. They know him. He's got obviously Stanley Cup experience, and it would be great goodwill for the fans. I think a lot of
Yeah,
fans
it'd
would
be
love
cool.
to have Tyler back, and they didn't do it.
Absolutely.
And he goes to
Hmm.
San Jose, and I thought he would have been perfect for the Kings, exactly what they've been looking for. So, are they going to be able to get a guy like that? I don't know. There are some names out there. The names being brought up are not going to wow anyone, but it could help if you can get a right-handed veteran forward with some playoff experience who can help you on the power play. Great, and I think that's what he's looking for. Whether he can do that or not, we'll see.
Yeah. I know it's just like we were talking about earlier. If we could get, some balanced scoring, I think that would change things a lot. And I watched your podcast after the Edmonton game, and just like we were talking about earlier, it seemed like a lot of fans were freaking out. But I thought there was a lot of positives to that game, and especially going into a playoff series with them again. I'm like, I felt better about our chances, So maybe he doesn't have to do anything drastic.
No,
Well,
I do
that's the
too.
big
I do too.
question that I wanted to hit you with, Eddie, is do you think, I mean, so it's still mid-January. Do you think this Kings team can get by the Oilers this time?
I think they can, but I understand why a lot of people would say that they still probably won't. And I think that last game was a really good example of why people have their doubts. Because even though the Kings lost, they held a very good, powerful team that's been playing great of late to one goal. And they made it really hard on the Oilers to do what they like to do. And that's great. That's a good sign. But the problem is they still have two elite players that can make a play and change a game. And the Kings don't have those guys. As much as I love Adrian Kempe, and he's a great player, an underrated player, he's not that guy. He doesn't take over a game. He may have a moment where he does something really special. But, in that game against the Oilers, Leon Draisaitl makes a great play, and it ends up with a Connor McDavid goal. And it only took that one time, and that was it. So I think the Kings are better equipped this year to take on the Oilers if they meet in the playoffs. I think we've got better goaltending. I think our defense is better as a team. I think we can do a lot of things to make it difficult on them. But the thing we don't have and aren't going to have is those two horses that, and maybe they make 2 or 3 plays, but maybe that's the difference in a series. It's hard to overcome those two types of guys. It really is. You can stop them for 2 or 3 games, maybe, but 7 games or something like that. It's hard. It's really
Mhm.
hard. And maybe they won't match up with Edmonton. We'll see, because Vegas is kind of slipping right now. And maybe it ends up being Vegas in LA. But yeah, I understand specifically against the Oilers. Like, we've played them tough twice. We'll see how it goes the other 2 games. 1-goal games. We won in our place. They won in their place. But playoff type games, low scoring, hard fought games. But do I feel better this season so far if that matchup happens? Yes. But is that still necessarily enough? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to know, and it's tough to, to win, to do that 4 times. You can maybe hold them down for a game or 2 or 3, but just getting that, doing that 4 times, you need a combination of maybe Kemper stealing a game that they shouldn't have. But yeah, you're right. They don't have the game breakers. And that's kind of the thing that we've talked about. The Kings are more of a, win by committee, score by committee type of squad. And a lot of the contenders, they have those guys that have over 100 points in a season, kind of horses. Edmonton has 2, which doesn't seem fair, but we can cry to the hockey gods, but that's the way it is. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they may end up winning the Pacific, the Oilers, and then would you? Is it a better matchup for the Kings than maybe play Vegas?
Well, just because of the history, I think I'd have to say yes. And Vegas, Jack Eichel's a really good player. Mark Stone's a really good player. They're not Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, right? They're a notch below. And yes, they have won a Stanley Cup, and that can't be understated. So they have done it. I think their defensive core for Vegas is way better than Edmonton for sure. Their goaltending probably a little bit better too. So is it a better matchup? It's still going to be hard, but I just think mentally, with what we've done the last 3 years against Edmonton, probably would feel a little bit fresher, probably would have a little bit more of a optimistic attitude, I think, going into that series, not just from the fan base, but from the players as well, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun rivalry. And I think people would, I think I personally would rather see something else
Yeah.
this time around than maybe a matchup with the Oilers in the first round.
Yeah.
How you get to that, I don't know if you want to slip to a wild card or something, but maybe that's not a good idea either. But yeah, there's that matchup there, and it's hard to contain both, Draisaitl and McDavid. I mean, it's a tough ask, not just for the Kings, really any team in
No,
the
for
league,
sure. And clearly they can't do it by themselves. And I don't think the supporting cast is as good as it has been for them. But again, that question that's kind of a bigger picture question. That's kind of a Stanley Cup question, right? Are they good enough, deep enough to have another Stanley Cup run? I don't know that they are, but are they good enough to beat the Kings in a first round series? I mean, that's a different question. Yeah.
Right. So we were talking about this the other day. Is the Vegas Golden Knights, is that like the greatest expansion team in like sports history?
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
Because I'm trying to think of some other, even in some other sport or some other expansion team that has just been so excellent since their inception.
no, I certainly
And I can't think of anyone.
in the four major sports, I can't think of any team, because usually when you're an expansion team, there's an expansion draft and you get all the scraps from all the other teams.
Exactly.
But that wasn't, obviously the NHL changed it because they said, listen, you pay us more millions of dollars to come into the league and we'll make it a more equitable thing for you guys. And they took advantage of that and they got a lot of good players. And then they also have ownership and a front office that goes for it all the time. It's kind of that Vegas attitude, we're going in all in.
Yeah,
We're going in all in. We're going to try and win big. And it's definitely worked out for them. And they are, they've really endeared themselves to that city and that community. And, I know
I
they're,
mean, it hurts me a lot to say anything nice about those guys, but you got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, it's just incredible what they've done out there.
yeah. And, they're trying to, get a baseball team and they've got the Raiders, but it's just not the same. They've come from somewhere else. This is actually Vegas's team. I think that does mean something to those people there. And they were the first, and then having the success that they've had spoiled those fans a lot. But you know what, if I was one of their fans, I'd be spoiled too. I mean, it's been amazing. No, I can't even think of anyone that's even close to them in sports history as far as being a successful expansion franchise like they have.
Yeah, I thought about the Flyers because they came in the same year as the Kings, I think, in '67, and by the early mid '70s, they were good. The Broad Street Bullies or whatever.
Right. But
not like this.
Not from day one, though. No.
No, not just like off the opening draw. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, they just. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so Eddie, if for some reason you couldn't be a Kings fan, if the cosmos or the hockey gods just came together and decided you couldn't be a Kings fan, what team would you be a fan of, do you think?
Well, ironically, I think it's probably the team the Kings are playing tonight. When I was a kid, 1979 was a big year for me because that was when I guess I just became a sports nut. Like, it's all I cared about, watching sports and sports. That year, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Pittsburgh Pirates both won world championships in the same year. And I just remember watching the games and being just enamored with some of the players. They were kind of larger than life characters and things like that. And I just decided, growing up in Central California, where I was equal distance away from the Bay Area and Southern California, where you would have fans of all those teams all over in that area. You'd have 49er fans and Ram fans and Dodger fans and Giants fans. It was everything. I decided these are my teams, and I've stuck with them ever since. One was a really good decision. One was a really bad decision. The Steelers have been amazing, and the Pirates are awful. But I did kind of toy with being a Penguins fan. And they had Mario Lemieux. They had Jaromir Jagr. They were exciting, but I didn't get to see them much. It's not like today where you can watch all the games from any team on a satellite dish. The only team I could see was the Kings because there was no Sharks, there was no Ducks at the time. And their games were broadcast all over the state of California. And so getting to see them and getting to know those players, and then Gretzky coming, and then my roommate being a Kings fan, all kind of factored into, well, this is the team. this is the team I'm going to follow. So, but if for some reason that went away, it just would seem like kind of a natural fit. And I've been to Pittsburgh many times. I've seen the Penguins play in Pittsburgh. You know, my wife is a big Chargers fan, so anytime the Steelers and Chargers play each other, we always go to that game in Pittsburgh. And if usually hockey season is going on, we'll always catch a Penguins game just to go to a hockey game. So I guess if I had to, I would probably be a Penguins fan.
That's a good choice.
Yeah,
I've never been to Pittsburgh, but it seems like it's a really awesome sports town. You know, from like the vibe you get from it. And
yeah, it definitely is.
I remember those Steelers. Those guys beat my Rams in the Super Bowl.
They did. That was. I remember that first Super Bowl in the Rose Bowl was.
Yeah, I remember Lynn Swan
and John Stallworth and yeah,
Stallworth. Yeah,
it was kind of a home field advantage for the Rams, kind of, but not like it was for the Rams when they actually won their Super Bowl here recently. That was literally in the same stadium.
Right, so. Yeah, I think the Rams were winning at halftime, and then the Steelers came back and won that in the second half. That was some heartbreak for me. I remember that. So what about you, Tim? If you couldn't root for the Kings, who would you root for?
You know, I'm a Jets fan. I don't watch it.
What?
Yeah. Winnipeg. I don't know. I really like Dustin Byfuglien a lot. So when he was up there, I just loved watching him play. I like Scheifele too. I think he's kind of, you know, he's a talented guy and he's got some edge to him. And I don't know. I just like those guys. I don't know what they'll do, you know, in the playoffs, and you know, because I was pretty hyped up on them last year, but we'll see. I mean,
yeah, that's the question.
If I couldn't root for the Kings, they just play exciting brand of hockey to me, and they kind of always have, you know, since they've been back up there. So yeah, I like the Jets.
No, it's true. They're a fun team to watch, and you know, a lot of people have trouble with the fact that Gabe Vilardi's there and doing good things, but
yeah, that's hard to see.
they look great, but you know, they seem to have a problem getting it done in the playoffs. But maybe this year's going to be different. I don't know. Eddie, do you think they have a different feel to them this time?
We'll see. They're one of those teams that I think the fans are excited about what they're doing, but I also think they also feel like until you do it in the playoffs, I'm not going to get all that excited, you know? And I mean, I'm not sure what the matchups are right now, but I think, you know, there's a chance, probably won't happen, but like if Colorado's a wild card team, oh my God, what a challenge for any division winner to have to play that team. Because right now they're the number one wild card team. Right now they'd play Vegas in the first round. I mean, are you kidding me? That's terrible. That's tough. So
yeah, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, if Winnipeg matches, I mean, they took care of Winnipeg pretty easily last year. And Connor Hellebuck, who is going to probably win the Vezina again, who's great in the regular season, got lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, he did not look good.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a new coach there, so I don't know how much that could change things. But yeah, I mean, they're very talented. They really are. And Vilardi's definitely worked out for them. Kyle Connor is a guy who's a great offensive player. Had a natural hat trick in the first period the other day, which is insane.
Yeah, they had tons of weapons.
Yeah, but it's like until they do it in the playoffs, I think a lot of people around the league and probably even their own fans are like, show me you can do it in the playoffs, even, you know, in the first round, and then I'll consider you a threat.
Yeah, that's a great point. But just, I mean, really anybody in the Western, is there really like an easy out in the Western Conference? I don't really see one.
Well, maybe whoever's the second wild card team. Yeah,
you had to play some tough teams. Who would you say? The Flames, maybe, or?
Yeah, I think probably the second wild card out of the West will be a fairly easy, if you want to call it that way, first round matchup for somebody, whether it's Vancouver or Calgary, which I would think it's going to be one of those two teams. Yeah, I think those are, you know, they'll be happy to get in, but I would be surprised if they go farther than the first round.
Yeah, I guess that would be a tough ask for Dustin Wolf in goal for the Flames. You know, you don't really know what a rookie's going to be able to do in the playoffs, you know, when everything's so amplified. But he has shown the ability to, you know, steal games, and he looks like he's going to be a stud goalie for a long time to come.
Yeah, could be. I think the only thing with him is he needs to do what he does at home on the road. He's like, his numbers are like vastly different home and road. He's amazing at home, which we saw recently. But on
Yeah.
the road, kind of average on the road. So if you can kind of get those road numbers up, then I think they've got something there.
What about you,
All
Ryan?
right. What's that?
What about you?
Oh, for me, like for a team that I'd go for if I couldn't root for the Kings,
Yeah.
I'd probably have to go with the Habs in Montreal. I've always kind of liked the I've always liked the Canadians. And it's not being too much of a bandwagon now because they haven't won anything since '93. It would have been easy in the '60s and '70s when they won the Stanley Cup every year, basically. To be a fan in that way. But yeah, I'd probably have to go with the Eastern Conference team. But no, I think those are some good choices. Pens, can't go wrong with the Pens. They have that great tradition. They've had some great players and great fans. And the Jets, they're a fun team to watch when they're not beating the pants off the Kings.
I'm
I
glad.
prefer to watch them do their damage
I'm
elsewhere.
glad nobody said the Ducks, because there are some people who are like, oh, I like both Southern California teams. I'm just like, I don't what?
I don't
I don't,
get anyone.
That's an interesting take. Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
don't
don't.
get anyone who grew up in Southern California and chooses to root for the Ducks. Like it just, I don't know. I'll never get that.
I just remember when they came into the league and when just initially when there was chatter that, hey, Disney's going to have a team in the NHL, they're going to be called the Mighty Ducks. I just thought, no, that couldn't happen. That's
Yeah, me
ridiculous.
too.
A team off a movie,
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. And then I still remember on the KCAL telecast that first season when they scored a goal, they had a little graphic of Tinkerbell that would come and go around the court.
yeah.
You guys remember
And
that?
the Pixie
That
Ducks.
that
Yeah,
just killed it for me.
yeah.
I
I
was
was
like,
like,
are you kidding me?
yeah,
You've got Tinkerbell coming in when you score a goal. This really is a Mickey Mouse franchise,
yeah, for sure.
And ever since then, I just like, no, I can't.
Same here.
But well, thanks so much for talking to us today, Eddie. It was
Yeah,
great.
this has been really cool. Thanks so much.
And hopefully, maybe we can see you at Crypto one of these days when we're all catching a game or something.
That sounds good. Thanks for having me. And anytime you want to say hi to a game, let me know. We can make that happen.
All right, cool.
That would be great. All right, go Kings, go.
Go Kings, go.